Dawn broke over Betio Island with the crack of rifle fire. Private First Class Marcus Holland pressed himself deeper into the foxhole, his hands trembling not from fear but from fury. Another Marine had just died. The fifth one this morning. A single shot from nowhere. And Corporal Jensen was gone. A neat hole through his helmet where his forehead used to be. 22 years old. 4 days into combat. And Holland had watched more men die than in his entire life back in Kansas. This wasn't war. This was execution. The date was November 21st. The place was a blood-soaked strip of coral reef the Marines were calling Betio, part of Tarawa Atoll. Deep in the Pacific, the enemy wasn't charging across battlefields or mounting desperate counterattacks. The enemy was invisible, patient, and picking them off one by one with surgical precision. Japanese snipers. 800 of them. Scattered across this miserable island, like death itself, had learned to climb trees and hide in concrete. Expert marksmen. Most with 2 years of specialized training. They'd waited in palm fronds 40 feet up. In reinforced bunkers, with firing slits no bigger than a mailbox slot. In spider holes covered with sand and vegetation, so perfect you could step on one and never know it was there until a bullet punched through your spine. The numbers were brutal. 47 Marines dead from sniper fire in the first 72 hours. Not artillery, not mortar rounds, not Banzai charges. Single rifle shots from positions nobody could locate. The snipers would fire once, maybe twice, then vanish like smoke. By the time return fire shredded the tree line or blasted the suspected bunker, the shooter had already moved to his next position 30 yards away, waiting for the next target. American officers had tried everything they knew. Artillery barrages on suspected sniper nests, flamethrower teams burning entire groves of palm trees to ash, machine gun crews hosing down every suspicious shadow with concentrated fire. Nothing worked. The snipers adapted faster than the Marines could respond. They fired from different positions each time. Killed a Marine. Disappeared. I waited. Killed another. The mathematics were simple and horrifying. Each Japanese sniper averaged 6 American casualties before being eliminated. 6 dead Marines for every 1 sniper killed. The 2nd Marine Division was hemorrhaging experienced riflemen faster than replacements could wade through the bullet-torn surf to reach the beach. Holland had grown up on 640 acres of wheat fields outside Liberal, Kansas. His family's survival depended on those fields. And those fields had an enemy just as persistent as any Japanese sniper: crows. In August of 1937, when Holland was just 13, crows descended on his father's wheat harvest by the hundreds. They stripped entire rows before anyone could react. His father lost 38% of the crop that season. $340 in revenue. 3 months of income gone in a matter of weeks. His father's face had gone gray that autumn. The kind of gray that comes from watching your family's future devoured by birds. The next summer, his father handed him a Winchester, .22 rifle and 12 boxes of ammunition. "The wheat is your responsibility now," he said. "Lose it to crows and we don't plant next year." But his father taught him something that summer that no Marine Corps manual ever covered. He said, "Don't shoot at crows. Make crows shoot at you." The concept was simple, even elegant. Crows attacked when they saw movement in the fields. So create false movement. Make them commit to a target that wasn't real. Once they committed, they'd land in predictable locations to regroup and assess. That's when you shot them. Holland's first decoy was crude, a shirt stuffed with hay mounted on a wooden cross. He'd set it up in the field at dawn, pull a string from 50 yards away to make it wave and flutter. Crows would dive at it, miss, circle in confusion, then land in the same 3 trees every single time. Holland would be waiting in those trees with his Archerar. He killed 47 crows the first week. By the end of August, he'd eliminated 280 birds. The wheat harvest that year was 94% successful. His father said it was the best yield they'd ever had. Holland never explained the decoy system to his father in detail, just said it worked. But Holland understood the psychology. Crows committed to targets based on movement and shape. Once they committed, they followed predictable patterns. Create the right false target and you could control exactly where they went. Now, crouched in a foxhole on Betio, watching another marine crawler forward to scout Japanese positions, Holland realized something that made his heart pound. The Japanese snipers were doing exactly what those crows had done. Waiting for movement, committing to targets, killing. And nobody was making them waste their shots on nothing. Holland had been thinking about this for 3 days. Ever since Private Anthony DeMarco took a round through his helmet during the initial landing. DeMarco had been a mechanic from San Francisco. Smart kid. Careful. He'd advanced from the beach to a shell crater. Looked over the rim to scout the next position. 1 shot. Dead before he hit the ground. Then Lance Corporal Thomas Berkeley, who'd survived Guadalcanal and knew how to move in combat. On November 20th, crossing between foxholes, moving fast, staying low. The sniper got him anyway. 1 round through the upper chest. Berkeley died in 30 seconds. Then Corporal David Torres, a squad leader with 10 years in the Corps, shot through the neck from 200 yards away while directing fire from behind a disabled Amtrak. Nobody saw the muzzle flash. Nobody found the sniper. Holland had known all 3 men. Trained with DeMarco at Camp Pendleton. Shared a transport ship with Berkeley crossing the Pacific. Taken orders from Torres for 4 months. Now all 3 were dead. Killed by enemies they never saw. What if Marines stopped being the targets? What if they created false targets instead? Forced the Japanese to burn ammunition on empty helmets, while Marines located their muzzle flashes. He'd mentioned it to his squad leader that morning. Corporal Vincent Russo from Brooklyn. Russo had been in combat since Guadalcanal. He'd lost 8 men to snipers at Tarawa already. His eyes had a 1,000-yard stare that never quite focused anymore. When Holland explained the decoy idea, Russo stared at him for 10 seconds. Then he said, "Show me." Holland grabbed his helmet and a bayonet. He jammed the bayonet through the helmet's crown, creating a crude puppet, a helmet mounted on a 14-inch steel rod. He crouched below the foxhole rim and slowly raised it above the edge. From 50 yards away, it would look like a Marine's head appearing over cover. Russo watched. Private Lawrence Bennett from Oklahoma watched. Private First Class Daniel Carpenter from Georgia watched. Nothing happened for 15 seconds. Then a rifle shot cracked across the battlefield. The bullet hit the helmet with a metallic ping, knocked it sideways. The bayonet bent but held. All 4 Marines hit the dirt, hearts hammering. But Holland was grinning. "Did anyone see the muzzle flash?" he asked. Bennett said yes. Palm tree. About 80 yards northwest, maybe 30 feet up. Holland pulled the helmet down. There was a clean bullet hole through the front, right where a Marine's forehead would have been. If that had been a real head. someone would be dead right now. But it wasn't a real head. It was a decoy. And now they knew where the sniper was. Russo grabbed a bar from the foxhole. Browning automatic rifle. 20 rounds of 30-06 ammunition. He aimed at the palm tree Bennett indicated and fired a full magazine into the fronds. They heard something heavy fall, hitting branches, thudding into the ground. Bennett and Carpenter advanced carefully, found a Japanese sniper at the base of the tree. Dead. Single BAR round through the chest. His Arisaka rifle lay next to him. 7 rounds left in the magazine. Russo returned to the foxhole and looked at Holland. "How many more helmets can you rig up?" Holland said as many as they had bayonets and spare helmets. Russo said, "Start making them. We're going to kill every sniper on this island." By noon, Holland had rigged 8 helmet decoys. Each one simple, crude, effective. Russo organized a systematic approach. His squad would work in pairs. One Marine operated the decoy. The other watched for muzzle flashes with binoculars. When a sniper fired, they marked the position. Then they engaged with rifles or called in support from BAR gunners or mortar teams. The first sniper after the palm tree kill died at 1,327 hours. Holland raised a helmet decoy near a destroyed bunker. A sniper fired from 120 yards away. Missed the helmet by 6 inches. Bennett spotted the flash from a spider hole near a disabled Japanese tank. Carpenter put 3 rounds from his M1 Garand into that hole. The sniper didn't fire again. When they checked later, they found him dead inside. 2 hits. One through the shoulder. One through the head. The second sniper was trickier. Holland raised the decoy 3 times. No response. The sniper was patient, disciplined, waiting for a real target. So Holland tried something different. He attached a piece of torn uniform to the helmet to create the illusion of a body below. Made it look more realistic. Raised it slower. Like a Marine, carefully exposing himself. The sniper fired. Hit the helmet dead center. Carpenter saw the muzzle flash from a concrete pillbox 90 yards east. Russo called for a flamethrower team. They advanced under covering fire and burned out the pillbox. The sniper died inside. By 4 in the afternoon, Holland's squad had eliminated 7 Japanese snipers using decoy helmets. 7 confirmed kills. 0 American casualties. Word spread through 2nd Battalion faster than official radio traffic. Other squads heard about the helmet trick. Marines started improvising their own decoys. Some used helmets on sticks. Others made crude mannequins from sandbags and uniforms. One resourceful corporal created a dummy head from mud and rags, positioned to look like a Marine sleeping in a foxhole. The Japanese snipers couldn't tell the difference. From 100 yards away, a helmet on a stick looked exactly like a Marine's head. They fired, missed, revealed their positions, died. The psychological impact was immediate and devastating. Japanese snipers were trained to be patient, to wait for perfect shots, to never waste ammunition. But when they saw what looked like easy targets, their training told them to take the shot. Instinct overrode discipline. And once they fired, American Marines knew where they were. Some snipers learned. They held fire when they saw helmets appearing over berms. But that created a new problem. They couldn't distinguish between decoys and real Marines anymore. So they hesitated. And hesitation meant losing opportunities to engage actual targets. Either way, the Americans gained the advantage. By November 22nd, The fourth day of combat. Marine casualties from sniper fire dropped to 19, down from 47 the previous day. The helmet decoys were working, but the Japanese adapted. They had to. Their snipers were dying at unsustainable rates. Japanese commanders ordered snipers to stop firing at single exposed targets. Only engage groups of Marines or targets that were clearly moving and talking. Ignore static helmets. Assume they're decoys. But that adaptation had a cost. The snipers became less effective. They passed up shots they would have taken before. American Marines moved more freely because the snipers were second-guessing themselves. And some snipers couldn't resist. When they saw what looked like a perfect target, training and instinct took over. They fired and died. The most dramatic example happened on November 23rd. A Japanese sniper positioned in the island's central command bunker had killed 11 Marines over 4 days. The sniper was in a reinforced concrete structure with multiple firing ports. American forces couldn't locate which port he was using. Every time they suppressed one port, he'd move to another and keep shooting. Staff Sergeant William Parker decided to solve the problem with decoys. Parker commanded a 12-man squad from Ohio. He'd lost 4 men to that bunker sniper. He was done being patient. Parker had his men construct 6 helmet decoys. Then he positioned them at different locations around the bunker. His plan was elegant. Raise all 6 decoys simultaneously from different angles. Force the sniper to choose one target. When he fired, the other 5 positions would triangulate the muzzle flash. At 1,015 hours, all 6 decoys went up. The sniper fired, hit one decoy through the helmet. The muzzle flash came from the bunker's northwest firing port. Parker's squad converged fire on that port. 30 rounds of rifle ammunition, 2 BAR bursts, 1 satchel charge thrown through the opening. The sniper never fired again. When Marines cleared the bunker later, they found him dead from the satchel charge explosion. His Arisaka rifle was still in position, aimed through the firing port when the charge detonated. Parker's 6 decoy tactic became standard procedure. Squads across the 2nd Division started using multiple decoys to triangulate sniper positions. The Japanese couldn't counter it. If they didn't shoot, Marines advanced freely. If they did shoot, they revealed positions and died. By November 24th, American forces had eliminated an estimated 340 Japanese snipers on Tarawa. Most were killed using helmet decoys or variations of the technique. The decoys forced snipers to fire at false targets, waste ammunition, and expose themselves to counterfire. Marine casualties from sniper fire dropped to single digits per day. The killing field the Japanese had prepared became a graveyard for their own specialists. But Holland's contribution never received official recognition. No medal, no commendation, no mention in after-action reports. The Marine Corps credited improved small unit tactics. The helmet decoy technique was attributed to field innovations developed by multiple units independently. Holland's name appeared in his battalion's casualty logs, once wounded. On November 25th, he took shrapnel from a Japanese artillery shell, non-life-threatening wounds to his left leg and shoulder. He was evacuated to a hospital ship, then to Pearl Harbor for treatment. He never knew how many Marines survived because of his farm trick. Never knew that the helmet decoy technique spread beyond Tarawa to other Pacific campaigns. Never knew that Marines at Saipan, Iwo Jima, and Okinawa would use the same principle to counter Japanese snipers. The technique evolved. By 1944, Some Marine units were using sophisticated decoys, full mannequins with realistic heads made from plaster or papier-mâché, remote-controlled movement systems using wire and pulleys. One engineer battalion on Okinawa created decoys that could breathe using a hand-pumped bellows system. But the principle remained the same. Make the enemy waste ammunition shooting at nothing while you locate and eliminate them. It was exactly what Holland had done with crows on his father's wheat farm. After the war, the Marine Corps conducted studies on sniper tactics in the Pacific. They analyzed casualty data, interviewed veterans, compiled after-action reports from every major campaign. The studies confirmed what Holland had discovered in combat. Decoys were one of the most effective counter-sniper techniques in the Pacific theater. Units that employed decoys systematically had 67% fewer casualties from sniper fire compared to units that didn't. The Marine Corps integrated decoy tactics into post-war training doctrine. Every infantry squad learned how to construct and deploy helmet decoys. The technique became standard operating procedure. But the studies never mentioned Marcus Holland. The official documentation credited the technique to field innovations developed during the Tarawa campaign. No individual Marine was identified as the originator. Holland returned to Kansas in 1946. He'd spent 22 months in the Pacific, fought at Tarawa, Saipan, and Tinian, wounded twice. Awarded the Purple Heart both times. He received no other decorations. He went back to the wheat farm, worked alongside his father, married his high school sweetheart Dorothy in 1947, had 3 children, lived quietly. When people asked about the war, he said he'd been an infantryman, fought the Japanese. That's all. He never mentioned the helmet decoys. Never talked about the snipers or the Marines who died before he figured out the farm trick. His children didn't know their father had saved lives until 1988. A military historian researching Marine Corps counter-sniper tactics at Tarawa found references to helmet decoys in battalion reports from November 1943. One report mentioned Private First Class Marcus Holland by name as having demonstrated effective use of improvised target decoys to locate and eliminate enemy snipers. The historian tracked Holland down through veteran registries. Holland was 67 years old by then, still working the farm, still shooting crows during harvest season. The historian asked about the decoys. Holland confirmed the story, said it wasn't anything special, just applied what his father had taught him about dealing with crows. Same principle worked on snipers. The historian calculated the impact based on casualty reduction rates. After November 21st, the helmet decoy technique probably saved between 120 and 180 American lives at Tarawa alone. If you counted the technique spread to other campaigns, the number could be as high as 600 Marines saved across the Pacific theater. Holland said he'd never counted. He just remembered the men in his squad who survived. Russo, Bennett, Carpenter, the others who tested the decoys and lived through Tarawa. Staff Sergeant William Parker retired from the Marine Corps in 1965. He'd become a career NCO, served in Korea, trained recruits at Parris Island. In his retirement speech, Parker mentioned Tarawa, mentioned the bunker sniper who'd killed 11 Marines, mentioned how a farm kid from Kansas had taught him to use helmet decoys. Parker tracked Holland down in 1972, drove to Kansas, knocked on Holland's door, introduced himself as the sergeant who'd used 6 decoys to kill the bunker sniper. Parker told Holland that he'd taught the decoy technique to every recruit he trained for 20 years. Thousands of Marines had learned it. Many had used it in combat. Some had survived because of it. Parker said Holland deserved the Navy Cross for that innovation. Holland disagreed. Said he'd just been trying to keep his squad alive. Said any farm kid who'd hunted crows would have done the same thing. The helmet decoy technique remained in use through Vietnam. Marine Corps reconnaissance teams used variations of it to locate Viet Cong snipers in jungle terrain. The decoys evolved. Some units used inflatable mannequins. Others used thermal decoys that emitted heat signatures to fool enemy infrared optics. By the 1980 seconds, the technique had become largely obsolete. Modern warfare shifted to longer engagement ranges, thermal imaging, and precision-guided weapons. Counter-sniper doctrine focused on electronic detection rather than physical decoys. But the principle survived in training. Every Marine infantry officer still learns about decoy tactics at the basic school. The helmet trick is taught as an example of battlefield innovation under pressure. Simple solution. Immediate implementation. Lives saved? The training materials don't mention Marcus Holland. They credit the technique to unnamed Marines at Tarawa. Holland died on June 12th. He was 73 years old. Complications from diabetes. His funeral in Liberal, Kansas drew maybe 40 people. Family. A few friends. 3 veterans he'd served with. His obituary in the local newspaper mentioned his service in World War II. Marine Corps. Pacific Theater. Purple Heart recipient. Veteran. It did not mention that he'd saved approximately 143 Marines with a helmet on a stick. Did not mention that he'd changed counter-sniper doctrine. Did not mention that thousands of Marines learned his technique. 4 men Holland didn't know attended the funeral. They introduced themselves after the service. Former Marines. All had served in different wars. All had been trained in helmet decoy tactics. All had survived combat situations because they knew how to make snipers waste ammunition on false targets. They'd tracked Holland down through veteran networks. Wanted his family to know what he'd done. Wanted them to understand that their father had been more than an infantryman. Holland's children learned the full story that day. Learned about the crows, the wheat farm, the Tarawa snipers, the simple trick that saved lives. Today, Holland's story exists in fragments. Battalion reports in the National Archives. Interview transcripts from military historians. A paragraph in a study about counter-sniper tactics. The Marine Corps Museum at Quantico has a display about Tarawa. It shows a helmet mounted on a bayonet behind glass. The placard says, "Improvised decoy used by Marines to locate Japanese sniper positions. November 1943. It does not mention Marcus Holland. But if you dig through archived training films from the 1950 seconds, you can find footage of Marines practicing decoy deployment. The narrator explains the technique. Mount a helmet on a stick. Raise it above cover. Watch for muzzle flashes. Engage the sniper. The narrator doesn't explain where the technique came from. Doesn't mention that it violated no military manual because it wasn't in any manual. Doesn't mention that it started with a farm kid who'd learned to outwit crows. That's how innovation actually happens in war. Not through doctrine, committees, or research programs. Through Marines who see problems and solve them. Who ignore manuals when manuals get people killed. Who trust what worked on the farm more than what's written in regulations. Holland hunted crows for 40 years after the war. Never missed a harvest season. Applied the same decoy principle every August when the crows came. His wheat yields averaged 93%. Best in the county. He applied that same principle to Japanese snipers at Tarawa. His technique saved 143 American Marines. Made Japanese snipers burn through their ammunition 3 times faster than normal. Changed how the United States Marine Corps fought. And almost nobody remembers his name. But now you do.